Hello and welcome to Paul on Politics, our regular review of all the week's political news and events live on KMTV. Now, by any measure, it has been a pretty dramatic week at Westminster, and two Kent MPs have been at the centre of that drama. Sevenoaks MP Sir Michael Fallon quit his job as Defence Minister, while Ashford MP Damien Green is the subject of a Cabinet inquiry, both over claims of inappropriate behaviour. We'll be discussing whether we have unreasonable expectations of our MPs when it comes to their behaviour, or whether we should actually expect higher standards from our elected representatives. And we'll be asking if the government's house-building targets risk concreting over the Garden of England. Our guests today are the Tonbridge and Morley MP Tom Tugendhat and the UKIP leader of Thanet Council, Chris Wells. Thanks to both of them for coming in. First, Louisa Britton recaps the events involving the former Defence Secretary and Sevenoaks MP Michael Fallon.
Sir Michael Fallon's become the first cabinet member to resign in the midst of the sexual harassment scandal engulfing Westminster. He stepped down as Defence Secretary on Wednesday evening amid suggestions of inappropriate behaviour. He admitted his personal conduct had fallen below the high standards he requires of the armed forces. Today he made his first public appearance since resigning from his cabinet post. He was at the opening of a controversial school in his district, the Weald of Kent Grammar School Annex in Sevenoaks.
20 years as Member of Parliament for Sevenoaks. This is my proudest day.
His resignation comes after he issued an apology earlier this week for repeatedly putting his hand on a journalist's knee during the 2002 party conference. But she's dismissed the incident as mildly amusing and said she didn't think he should have resigned if that was the only reason behind it.
I'm very surprised. The information we've been given in the news is that it was a trivial issue, so I don't understand why he feels necessary to stand down.
Well, I was quite shocked and basically really sad because he's such a well-respected politician. And this event happened a long time ago, and it almost seems trivial that he's having to resign when he's playing such an important part in the country.
Quite shocked, actually. I actually thought he was a very good Defence Secretary and a good pillar of the community.
And today, fresh claims have emerged that allege he made lewd remarks to Leader of the House of Commons, Andrea Leadsom, which he denies. The Prime Minister has now announced that Chief Whip Gavin Williamson will take up the position as Defence Secretary. But with the scandal growing in Westminster, there are still fears that more ministers could follow suit. This is Louisa Britton for KMTV in Sevenoaks.
Well, Tom, no one could deny there's a problem and an issue which needs addressing here, but how widespread do you think this kind of behaviour is?
Well, this is news to me. As you know, Paul, I've been in Parliament for 2 years and this would be unacceptable in any of the other places I've ever worked. So I'm afraid to say this is quite a surprise to me because it's certainly not something I've seen in my generation of members of Parliament, of either side actually. And so I'm very disappointed that it's going on at all. Nobody should have to work in a workplace where they face any form of abuse, whether it's sexual abuse or racial harassment or any form of discrimination, and this is quite wrong.
Why do you think there is this sense that among certain MPs that it has been acceptable behaviour? I mean, Michael Fallon himself said, talked about it not being acceptable 10 or 15 years ago. That's not actually that long a time, really.
Well, look, I'm not going to speak for Michael Fallon on this. All I'm going to say is that it has never been acceptable as far as I've been working, and I started working in 97, 98, so that's a few years ago, and I don't recognise this pattern of behaviour in my generation of members of Parliament of either side. As I say, it's a very great disappointment to me.
Chris Wells, I mean, do you think there's a similar issue in local government?
I don't think there's a dissimilar issue in the sense that I think there is a generational thing that goes into a lot of this. Is I think people from a generation perhaps who started work in the 50s and 60s and a little bit later will often find themselves out of line with some of the modern expectations of how you would behave. But Tom's absolutely right, is that we all have to be able to treat other people with respect within the workplace and make sure they are very, very content to be there, just in a very simple manner, in that actually you get that better working environments out of people, you get better working relationships from people, and you get better work from people if you all treat each other in that way.
One of the things that surprised me, Tom, was to discover there aren't actually any formal processes or procedures by which Commons staff can actually register their concerns about this. There doesn't seem to be an HR unit in the House of Commons. That's incredible.
Well, it's not quite as incredible as you think, Paul, because of course each individual MP, like each councillor, is not employed. They're elected. So it's up to the people of Tonbridge and Morling, in my case, or Sevenoaks or whoever it is, to choose who they wish to have representing them. And if you're not excluded because you're bankrupt or a criminal, then it's absolutely up to the people of Sevenoaks to choose who they wish to have representing them.
Yeah, but surely, for Commons staff who are not, elected in that sense, there has to be something there for them to be able to register their concerns.
That's exactly why the Conservative Party has a code of conduct which has been refreshed today and has just been published on the website. And if anybody has any complaints, there's an email and a phone number to register them, and there's a formal procedure to go through. But of course, staff are not employed by the Commons. They're employed individually by the members of Parliament. So it's up to each member of Parliament to make sure that the working environment is what you and I would expect, Paul, a place where people can really reach the talents that they wish to reach and reach the heights they do.
Does UKIP have a code of conduct for its members, Chris?
I'm sure it does. I'm not sure it's always kept to in the way that we would like, but I'm sure it's there and I'm sure it's part of what we do. But of course, local councillors do have a code of conduct that's nationally based. And sadly, that's been weakened in recent years by government changes to what it was maybe 10 or 20 years ago. And I think that you do need to have something in that context that has real sanctions for people who misbehave. And I'm not sure those sanctions are available in local government in the way that they were a few years ago.
OK, well, the other prominent politician and Cabinet Minister and Kent MP in the spotlight this week was Damien Green. Duarte Diaz sums up the week's events.
The MP for Ashford, Damien Green, has been accused of acting inappropriately towards a journalist back in 2015. Although he strongly denies the claims, Kate Morby said he touched her knee and sent inappropriate text messages. The First Secretary of State said the allegation is untrue and deeply hurtful. Theresa May has launched an inquiry to investigate the alleged incident and to see if the First Secretary of State has broken the ministerial code. Damien Green's told KMTV that he hopes it's concluded quickly. The MP for North Thanet, Sir Roger Gale, said he knows Damien Green very well and that the whole thing has gotten out of hand, saying there's a danger people won't be able to show affection for each other. He also said there's nothing improper about the text. Theresa May has said she'll ensure there's a system of proper processes when there are allegations around inappropriate behaviour.
I've written to all party leaders, inviting them to a meeting early next week so we can discuss a common, transparent, independent grievance procedure for all those working in Parliament.
Just to put on the record, I'm happy to meet with the Prime Minister and all party leaders to discuss this. We need better protections for all in this House.
Well, Tom, the political dimension of this is that Theresa May has lost a kind of cheerleader and ally in government. Is this kind of debilitating for the party?
No, it's not. It's a blow because Michael Fallon has been a very good defence minister. But no, it's not. It's no more debilitating than it is when Kelvin Hopkins was stripped of the Labour whip today for allegations that, despite having been made, saw him in the shadow cabinet. So it's.
But she wouldn't have wanted this to happen, would she?
No, of course she wouldn't have wanted this to happen. And I'm not, as I say, I'm not going to comment on the allegations against Michael Fallon. He's addressed them himself. But it's not good. But it's not good for anybody in Parliament. It's not a party issue.
And what about the appointment of Gavin Williamson as the new Minister of Defence? Some in your party are obviously not terribly happy about it.
Well, look, envy is not unique to the political world, as you know very well, Paul. But he's a guy.
Were you waiting for a phone call yourself?
Look, as you know very well, I've only just started chairing the Foreign Affairs Committee, and that's taking up an awful lot of time, and I'm very pleased to be doing it. But look, Gavin is a guy who is trusted very much by the Prime Minister. He did, after all, run her leadership campaign, and he was Chief Whip. So having somebody like that who is really trusted by the Prime Minister, who really knows his way around Whitehall, in charge of defence, means that the resources available to defence are likely to get a bit better because, of course, he can make his voice heard that much more clearly.
Chris, I mean, does this mean that you think, does it mean the public are going to be less trustworthy of our politicians? Some people have said there's a kind of whiff of the expenses scandal about this particular issue.
I think there is an element of trust difficulty in all of this, and I think that that people are becoming ever more cynical about what they expect their politicians to do, and I don't think any of this helps. And I suppose in the context of being in Kent, having two really quite senior MPs across Kent in the midst of this scandal really doesn't help the atmosphere in Kent at all. So I think there are issues dealing with that, but all we can really do with that is to do the right things on the right occasion when these things come up, and make sure that people are behave in the right manner in between times.
It's interesting that, you know, obviously these allegations are kind of not party political in the sense that there are only one party involved. I mean, that's why I ask, you know, there's a sense in which this is perhaps a little bit like the expenses scandal when all parties were involved. Do you think there's a wider issue for politicians generally? What lessons have they got to learn?
Well, I certainly think there's a generational issue. I mean, look, I don't think that there's... It is not something I have seen occurring in my generation of politicians, with one exception, of course, Jared Amara, the new Labour MP for Sheffield Hallam. I haven't heard of it in other members of my sort of intake. Now, that doesn't mean it's not happening. I can't promise you that, but all I can say, I've not heard of it. And I think that this is more a generational issue that is moving through and should stop now. OK, well, we'll have to end the discussion there. When we come back, we will be asking if the government has got it wrong over its house building targets. Don't go away, we'll be back very soon. Welcome back to Paul on Politics Live on TV with our guests Tom Tugendhat and UKIP Council leader Chris Wells. Now, the government drive to create more affordable homes may be laudable, but for many, including a number of Kent MPs, the idea of forcing councils to accept thousands of more homes is unwelcome. Already several councils have told the government its increased targets are not deliverable, and Medway's 3 Conservative MPs have warned it could be ruinous for their area and quite impossible to meet. Keelan Webster reports.
Councils and MPs across the county have been telling the government that they will not be able to cope with the new housing targets. A revised formula the government plans to use will force councils to give the green light to building programmes if average house prices are high enough. As part of the plan, Kent could be forced to accept thousands more homes. 3 Medway MPs, Tracy Crouch, Kelly Tolhurst and Reman Chishti, have written to the government to say that the figure of 1,281 dwellings was a real challenge that we saw as unrealistic, but 1,665 is quite simply impossible. Medway lacks the appropriate infrastructure to support an additional population of more than 100,000. Sittingbourne and Sheppey MP Gordon Henderson has also written to complain, telling Mr Javid that Kent has taken more than its fair share of new houses. And Faversham and Mid-Kent MP Helen Watley also wrote to say she had serious concerns about the targets. Let's have a look at the numbers now then. Medway will be required to build a little more than 1,660 houses every year. Maidstone's house count could go up from 883 homes to just a little more than 1,200. On the coast, Thanet Council would have to build a smidge more than 200 homes a year to a grand total of 1,063. And Tonbridge and Malling Council will have to provide 859 homes, up from 696 from previous plans. The new targets have also been condemned by environmental groups who have complained that they will put even more pressure on Kent's countryside. We asked the residents of West Malling if they think their town can cope with the extra numbers.
I think the area is already struggling. I think the traffic everywhere, it's like round Aylesford and where all of the new homes are being built and extra ones at Kings Hill, it's just too much.
I think it'd be good for the area. I think, yes, we can cope. There's developments going on all the time.
We've lived in this area for 40 years and they've built thousands and thousands and thousands of new homes in that time, but the infrastructure is virtually as it was when we first moved here.
I think it's a really good thing because people need houses, but at the same time I'm really concerned because I live in Kings Hill, for example. King Hill is a very lovely area, but they're going to put more houses on there. I'm not so sure how the infrastructure is going to cope.
We've been against more building ever since we've been down here, and I mean that's what 40, 50 years, and they weren't able to cope then.
Well, Chris Wells, it seems that Thanet is an area where you're actually quite keen on encouraging more house building, because you've just decided in your local plan to earmark the Manston site as a possible location for lots of new homes.
I think that's a slightly simplistic question, I might say so, Paul. I mean, firstly, it's a delight to actually hear MPs actually joining in this debate, because I think for some time now there's been local council leaders all over Kent and the South East particularly, but elsewhere as well, who've been very unhappy about the way the house building targets have been put together. If you look at Thanet's own position, there's a situation here where we're being asked to probably look at somewhat over 1,000 new homes a year, and yet if you look back over the last 20 years, we've probably built no more than about 330 or so a year at the highest targets that we've had previously.
So that's
and the whole thing
huge
has
increase you're facing.
A huge increase in that context on what we've actually been able to attract developers to in the past. And I think this, this story goes back 10, 12, 14 years where people were trying to change the system, trying to change the way it actually came together. We've had a real sort of camouflage position where the government's been saying, no, it's a local council to decide how many houses actually gets built, but the system that's been handed down is like being given an equation. Well, yes, you make the decision, but you have to follow the equation that gives you the answer the government wanted. And now even that myth's been ripped away with the Secretary of State for Security simply saying, you're going to build this many.
Chris raises an important point here. This sounds like top-down government rather than localism in action, doesn't it? Because the Conservatives originally pledged that they'd allow councils to do what they wanted to do.
Well, what I'm seeing actually in Tonbridge Morning, I can't comment for other areas, is a very good local plan that has been put together by an extremely capable local council.
The council doesn't like it.
Oh, in Tonbridge Morning, on the contrary, there's been a lot of support for it. And the support has been because there are an awful lot of young people in our area who want the opportunity to work, to set up homes, to build families. And that requires house building.
I mean, do you genuinely think that simply increasing the number of homes available is going to bring down prices and address the affordability factor?
Well, it'll certainly start to address the affordability factor, and whether it brings it down or just merely slows the increase, either way, clearly supply and demand are two basic elements in an economic equation. And what's really important to see is that actually house building can be done really well. I spent this morning with Liberty Homes in Kings Hill, who've developed that area, and we were talking about the sort of things that you need to develop an area properly. So we were talking about a better clinic, we were talking about a secondary school.
Who's going to pay for all that?
That's the house builders who pay for it. This is what Section 106 agreements are for, and this is why I was talking to Tonbridge and Morning Borough Council this morning as well about exactly that. How do we use the money that house building brings into an area to get the services for everybody, not just for the new arrivals,
one of the issues your own council planners have raised is that they are worried that the Mayor of London will look to Kent to create more homes under their targets.
Well, the Mayor of London doesn't have a say in this quite so directly, but look, I'm very impressed with the work that Tonbridge and Morning Borough Council have done. What they've done is they put together a very innovative plan, a very imaginative plan, where they're using brownfield sites, they're using gaps, they're using places to really come up with some fantastic ideas so that we see our towns and communities develop.
Chris, do you think this does represent a real threat to Greenfield, the Green Belt? You know, a lot of people know Kent and love Kent for it being the Garden of England, and that all they can see is more houses being built on there.
Yes, it does, and I think Tom's right in the sense that there's another intergenerational element to this, in that people who've come down from other parts of the country and want to retire to certain areas, they don't like change, they don't like those sort of alterations. There clearly is an issue with a younger generation and being able to afford the rent and being able to afford the position of buying homes as we did when we were younger. So there's this element of balance between the generations. But the bottom line is, how realistic are the expectations for some of this house building? And the answer, I think, from almost all local councils in Kent is that this additional hike to those house building numbers is not realistic in any shape, manner or form.
So, Tom, you're not planning to write to Sajid Javid to register any concerns?
I have written to Sajid Javid to talk about how the process is working and to ask certain questions, and that I'll continue to do because, of course, it's a hugely important question. But actually, making sure that we have homes for young people in the communities that I'm privileged to represent is a really important one, and I'm absolutely in favour of making sure that people have opportunity like that.
Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your contribution on that subject. Now, after an explosive week in politics even, things are heating up for firework night, and the residents of Edenbridge have chosen their villain for the year. Who would our guests choose? We'll ask them after this report by Cameron Tucker.
For more than 2 decades, the Tonbridge Bonfire Society has poked fun at public figures. This year, it'll be an effigy of disgraced movie mogul Harvey Weinstein, which will burn at the stake on Saturday.
Well, last year we did Trump, which was political, so we just thought we'll have a change and we're going to go more of a celebrity in Hollywood. There's been Theresa May, there's been Jean-Claude Juncker, I think, been mentioned, and then obviously the Kim Jong-un. But I think we made the right choice not going political this year.
The decision to base this year's effigy on the Oscar-winning producer has already sparked anger on social media.
It's meant in a light-hearted way. It's obviously we don't, all the allegations against Harvey Weinstein. We're not, sort of celebrating that or anything like that. But he is the most current person in the media at this time, and so we're looking forward to blowing him up on Saturday.
As one Facebook user wrote, a hot topic that on Saturday will get even hotter. Cameron Tucker, KMTV, Edenbridge.
Tom, have you got a particular villain in mind you'd like to put on top of the Edenbridge bonfire?
Well, I suppose as an MP I should say the Chief Whip or something like that, but no, I'll stick. I'm quite a traditionalist on this, actually. I quite like seeing a guy on the top of a Guy Fawkes fire.
Chris, what about you?
I suspect they plan these things a few weeks in advance because of making the figure up or whatever, but I should think in Kent this week, if most people had their choice, they'd pick on the Secretary of State for Community, Sajid Javid. Oh,
right, over housing numbers, very good link there. I mean, these kind of rituals and events are good for communities, aren't they?
They're great. Look, I'm a Catholic, and this is, of course, remembering a Catholic plot against the Crown, against Parliament, nearly 400 years ago, just over 400 years ago. But I think that they're a great reminder of the various forms of tradition that bring us together, and who doesn't like fireworks on the 5th of November?
Are you going out, Chris, for a baked potato wrapped in silver foil? Or
no, I've done many years of that. My children are a little bit older now. I can sort of send them out on their own and they can drink quietly without me noticing, and I can sit in front of a fire and hear it all going off around me, so I'll be quite happy with that.
And you're planning to go to Edenbridge yourself, Tom?
Well, I'm hoping to, but it depends whether my kids get over a bug that you can hear I'm still struggling through, and if they're okay, then we'll go.
I mean, the other thing about this business is, about the Edenbridge one particularly, is often a politician that they choose. Does that worry you that you're the target? They had European Commissioner Claude Juncker and various other people.
I think it's perfect.
Do you get unfairly vilified?
No, I think if you are going to propose ideas, which is the job of politicians, if you're going to propose solutions to problems, you've got to be prepared to accept the rough that goes with that.
Chris, anyone asked if you'd like to sit on top of a bonfire?
Well, I think it's a happy thing to observe, simply because actually the very historical basis of what we're celebrating was political in its context. So why not a politician? It seems particularly appropriate.
Okay, right. Well, that's all from us here at Paul on Politics. Thanks very much to our guests for tonight coming into the studio. We'll be back soon. In the meantime, you can catch up on all the latest political news in Kent by logging on to KentOnline.co.uk, listening to KMFM, or following me on Twitter at Paul on Politics. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.